Cathal, maybe you'll make a dramatic entrance from over there.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so is the mic good now?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, we're good? Okay. Not picking up any CB radios or anything. Hi, everybody. Well, there's no business like show business. So welcome to Cathal McConnell's masterclass. This whole event came about a month ago. Cathal was performing on Prairie Home Companion, and Ed Haber and Margaret Vitaire and I had breakfast with them, and we realized that it had been 6 years since he'd done any solo appearance in New York, and we thought it'd be great to have him back. So you've waited long enough. I'm really not going to say anything. I think you all know why we're here and who we're going to see. So here's Cathal. Big surprise.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here. And before I play anything at all, I'd like you to give a round of applause to Bill Ochs here, who made the whole thing, and his woman Margaret, and all the other people. Bill and I are old friends. Well, we're getting older all the time. We've been, I've known Bill a long time, and over the years we've kept in touch, and I enjoy his music, and he enjoys what I've come across. I come from a musical family, and my father, late Sandy McConnell, was a singer. He played the flute, and he played the whistle, and he played the accordion in his youth. And that's the side of the family my music comes from. And my mother, Mary McConnell, she liked music, but ironically enough, she couldn't play a note. She had no music at all, really no music. She couldn't even sing, you know. I mean, she's a lovely woman. I'm not criticizing the woman or anything like that. She couldn't even, it's amazing, when she turned on the radio, she couldn't put it right on the station, you know, like it's amazing. But, so definitely the music came from my father's side of the family. And my father, Sandy McConnell, who was born in 1903 and died in the 70s, and his father also played the flute. That was Sandy, and he would have died sometime in the 30s. I never met him, obviously enough. And his father before him as well, Micky McConnell, he was known as Stuttering Micky, and he also played the flute. And that's a way back. I mean, he died, I think, 1897, 1896, something like that. Lived to be an old man. And, of course, the singing run in the family as well. My father had a small shop, and this is a place called Tony Lumman, near Balnalek, about 5 miles from Enniskillen in County Fermanagh. Enniskillen is the main town. And my mother was a school teacher. So I suppose we were a little bit better off than some of the other neighbours that were in the area. But people were quite poor in those days. I mean, life was pretty hard. There was one Christmas, I got a whistle my brother Cormac, my older brother Cormac, got a whistle for Christmas. And he went to play it, and he couldn't play it. There was a simple tune called Let Erin Remember, and he only got as far as Let Erin Ree, and the whistle was there. To give you an idea how simple a tune is, I'll play you Let Erin Remember. Would you like to hear it, would you? It's a simple wee tune. My father showed me the notes of it. You know, D, E, F, G, because he couldn't read music or that way. But great man. So Let Erin Remember. It's a good tune to start with, and it goes like this. Mind you, I haven't played it very often since. It's a song. So anyway, I seemed to take to the whistle, and my father taught me tunes like Old Lang Syne and some simple march tunes. Another tune I remember he taught me was Brian Brew's March. I'm sure you remember that one, Bill, wouldn't you? I'll just play it once over just to give you an idea. Another tune that he taught me was a tune called O'Connell's Trip to Parliament. And I played it to Dave Richardson in the band. And he knew the tune. He said he used to play it. And that's Dave Richardson, the Boys of the Loch. And he called it Buttered Peas. And Dave comes from Northumberland. And the tune seems to be known over there. But I never heard anyone else playing it except my father. And it's quite a pleasant wee tune, so I'll play it for you. He called it O'Connell's Trip to Parliament, and that must have been to do with Daniel O'Connell. I'm a Catholic by religion. That's how I grew up. That's my religion. You can't help that. You've no control over that. Anyway, they only discovered my problem one time when my mother was trying to teach me to bless myself. You know, to bless the Father, Son, the Holy Ghost, all that sort of thing. And she stood a different side where she normally stood to me, and I blessed myself perfectly. And the reason was I was half blind, I couldn't see, and they never discovered that. So I should have had glasses when I was 2 or 3, and didn't get them till I was 7, 7 or 8. With the result that I suppose I lost a lot of that development that you do when you're a kid. And when the music came along, I think that when I started to play music, I was very much focused into playing, because I found something then that I really could do, and I was really into it in a big way. Anyway, my father taught me whatever tunes, and my father started to run out of tunes because he could only play marches and things like that, and airs. The Coolian was another one he taught me, which I still remember with fondness. So help had to be got in, and it was traditional those days. You brought in somebody who could teach you. And they got the help of a man called P. Flanagan, and P lived up the road about 8 miles from me. P played the fiddle, and he played the flute. And he was a good musician. He again was of a musical family. It seemed to be those days there was musical families and there was other families who would be good at football, like Gaelic football and all that sort of thing. So I suppose if I'd have been a good footballer, they'd have brought me to somebody who was a good footballer to train me. And it was traditional those days to bring a man down like P. Flanagan, bring him down to the house and give him a bottle of Guinness, a bottle of Guinness or two, maybe 3 bottles of Guinness, which was in those days, maybe a whiskey. But I discovered that I think they didn't like P that much, but he could do the business as regard the music. And he'd come down and basically what he'd do, he would play and I would watch him playing. Because in those days you just had to learn by ear. P couldn't read the music. He couldn't write the music. So I just had to watch him. Now, you're very lucky nowadays you have somebody like Bill Ochs who can write music, read music, and you have tape recorders and all that sort of thing, all iPods and mini discs and all these sort of type of things aid to music. But I had to learn just by watching P. And I had to learn all the triplets, all this sort of thing. That sort of thing. Now, this was the type of whistle we had at the time. Not this one, obviously, because this is a modern make of the old Clark's whistle. But this is Clark's. Same shape. And I wasn't a great lover of the Clark's whistle. I mean, people would wax eloquent. Oh, the Clark's was wonderful, and all that. So this is how P taught me. And I'll play 1 or 2 of his tunes. P learned his music from his father, Claude, they were small men. A lot of people thought Claude was just like a clod of turf, like a small, diminutive. But P always maintained it was French. It was from Claude Duval, and he was a very sharp old boy. He was very intelligent and was a good singer himself. And he would have learned his music from his father. Now, I missed P's father by a few years. P's father died about 1950 or thereabouts, so I would have been starting to play about 1952 or something like that. A hell of a long time ago. Now, this is one of the tunes that P played. He had a slow style of playing, ornamented style of playing. I'm going to play one of his tunes, and I think this is Over the Moor to Molly. And this is more or less the way he played. So, I'll play it for you. Now, in those days as well, I learned a number of tunes of 78s. I don't know whether you've seen the 78s very much. Go 78 revolutions per minute. And again, It was tough learning tunes of the 78s, but I do remember learning tunes of the 78s, like there were some of the well-known tunes at the time, the Michael Coleman, the Tar Bolton, the Longford Collector and the Sailor's Bonnet. Those would have been tunes I would have learned from the 78s, I think. I learned a tune, there was a whistle player called Miles O'Malley who played the Swallow's Tail and the Heather Breeze. I definitely remember learning that and winding up the old gramophone and going over and over and over it again and using up the needles. So it was quite a laborious business. So you had to rely on your ear. But to come back to P, I'll play you another one or two of his tunes, and I'll try and explain you something about his style of playing. He done this sort of heavy roll as a delayed action roll, which I call it a delayed action roll. It's sort of like there's a sort of like a microsecond. There's a sort of a microsecond between that note and there's a sort of a hesitate in it, and you don't often hear it done now. And the reason is you can't really execute that way of playing at speed because it doesn't happen. Most people would play, say, that the tune that I played there, they would play it a more legato way. I'll just give you an idea of what I'm saying. That tune is not played anyway, but people would be more inclined nowadays to play it this way. Can you see the difference? Or can you hear the difference? Not easy for you to see the difference. So I played two more of Peace tunes. He played, of course, Roaring Mary and the Skylark. And he played a lovely version of the Skylark. I'll just play the Skylark on its own. Roaring Mary and the Skylark. And this is the way he played them. But he played a lovely variation on the Skylark, which I'll play it slow for you after. If for some reason these tunes were played together, I don't know why. I suppose they went well together, and that's the way. many people might want to ask me a question or two. Have you any questions at this point?
Did you buy an iPod?
No, I haven't bought an iPod. No, I haven't got around to that yet. There was very little around in those days. Anybody else want to ask a question?
I noticed that on different tunes you beat time with your feet in different ways. Is there something that guides which style you use for which tune?
Not at all. I'm not even aware of it. Not even aware of it. Okay. Well, I'll continue on with P. Flanagan. I have to thank him for his way of playing. It's a certain style of playing, if you understand. It has a slower, sort of melodic way of. It's a different kind of a structure. I'll probably, just before I leave P's playing, I'll just try and play a jig, which I learned from him. A jig called Tobin's Favourite. And it's a well-known tune in the tradition. And maybe a hornpipe, which he gave me in the old days. Now, I have to emphasise to you that in the old days there wasn't half as many tunes, or a tenth as many tunes around as they are now. It was a different time. It was a time when, if you like, there was hardly any cars on the road. I mean, I think I just came at an end of an era where I remember like horses and carts on the road, and a lot of people used bicycles. Few people had cars. And when we went to Mass on a Sunday, we needed a man to drive us to the chapel on a Sunday. So it was a completely different time, I suppose, a much quieter world. You weren't as aware of the world as you are nowadays with television and all that. And I didn't know what the television was in those days. Anyway, I'll play another one of P's tunes. This would be Tobin's Favourite, which you probably know. Another tune he taught me in the old days was the high-level hornpipe. And the high-level was composed by a man called James Hill, who was a Scotsman from Dundee and lived most of his life down in the Newcastle area. And it was considered a sort of a test tune at home in the old days. Somebody, if they wanted to know you, could you play the high level? And if you couldn't play it, you weren't classed as a musician. And the normal key of it, fiddle players, you know, the key that was composed on was B flat, but we were still in C here. So this is the way he played it, and then I'll move on to something else after that. I could go on about P. He played a whole lot of other tunes. I might play another of his tunes before I'll leave his music. This is the high level now. Do you know the tune? Yeah. Sometime around the 50s, I got my first generation whistle, and these were an improved version of the Clarks, and they're in a different key, of course, in the key of D. And at that time, there used to be a man who'd go up to Belfast, which is, as far as I was concerned, was 1,000 miles away, and he'd bring back some of these generation whistles. And I've been playing the generation for a very long time. And I'll try and play a tune on the generation now for you. This is another P. Flanagan tune, which is called Handsome Sally, and this is a tune which he got from his father. And it's Matt Malloy plays another version of this tune, Matt Malloy, the flute player, and but I prefer P. Flanagan's version. If you get Matt Malloy's record, The Stony Steps, you'll find Handsome Sally on it. But this is P. Flanagan's version. No. Anyway, I should emphasise that the rest of the family was musical. My brother Micky also learned the whistle with me. Micky no longer plays the whistle, but he's known now. He would be a singer-songwriter and writes a lot of his songs. One of his most famous songs, I suppose, is a song called Only Our Rivers Run Free, and various other songs which he has. And Micky writes quite a lot of political songs, and he's reckoned a good. Well, I mean, I think he's a very good songwriter, but he's an acquired taste. He's not for everyone. And my brother Cormac, we all sang. We sang. Cormac doesn't play, and another brother Sean. Sean sings and plays, and in the old days we just grew up singing and playing. We're a musical family, and we weren't too conservative. We grew up with the pop songs and the music that was going that day, way back in the old days. Like songs like, I can remember even bits of it, although it's a bit of a useless memory, like songs like, how much is that doggy in the window? Or something like, I see the moon and the moon sees me under the shade of the old oak tree. Please let the light that shines on me shine on the one I love. Do you want to hear any more? Anyway, I was very lucky to have. We were very lucky, the whole family, to have a good father and a good mother who were great, interesting people. They all spoke Irish. My father was taught Irish in the school because the headmaster was a bit of a fanatic on Irish. My mother also spoke Irish, but she wasn't too crazy on Irish. She preferred French. And anyway, we went. They encouraged us a lot, and I went to my first big outing was a Cheoil, which is a very, very long time now, in 1958. You can calculate how long that was, to compete in a competition. And we left for a place called Longford. And really, nowadays it's no journey, you know, but in those days it was a Shakespearean drama. We were getting ready for weeks before that, and we set off for Longford. And my father, you know, we went to mass beforehand, and then my father had to stop a few times for a drink along the way, and a journey that normally would take, say, an hour and a half probably took 3.5 hours, you know, more. And we arrived in there, and we competed in a competition in Longford, and that was my first big cultus gathering, and it was quite an extraordinary experience that time. Much smaller, much you know, simpler days. I heard a lot of good musicians, and I think I was recorded by Kieran McMahon at that time, and I was never used. I would like to hear the recording I done that time, but it was never used. Then we went on. I went to. We used to go to Donegal in the old days for the holidays to a place called Bundoran, and my mother took me up to Bundoran just for a little holiday, and there was a competition on in Donegal, and she entered me into this talent competition, and I got up and played, and there was all different people. There was a guy playing the guitar and singing. There was somebody else playing the fiddle. There was somebody else playing classical music, and somebody else doing something else. And when the results of the competition came, they said first is so and so, second is so and so, and third is so and so. But we're very sorry to eliminate the boy from the north, because the competition was confined apparently to Donegal, but there was no mention about it on the poster. And it must have been pretty bad, it must have been pretty damning when people stopped my mother and myself on the street and said, that young boy was done wrong, you know? So in a fit of temper, she wrote to the BBC, because she was a very spirited woman. She didn't, and we went up to Belfast for an audition. And I remember going up to the BBC that time. It was quite a nerving experience, because you went in, you know, a big conservative building. You went in, you were ushered into a building, and I was there with my little whistle, and there was a light went on. You were told when to start, and I started, and I played, well, whatever I played, a reel, jig, and hornpipe or whatever, and then I went out, and the man came back to see us in the waiting room where both my mother and I were, and my mother asked him how did it go, and he said he's passed, and what's more, he's passed for Dublin as well, Radio Erin as it was known at that time. So they played the tape of me playing for through to Dublin, and they liked it well enough. And from then on, I started to appear on children's programs as Children at the Microphone, sometimes down in Dublin and sometimes sometimes up in Belfast. I started, so I got, you know, started playing on radio and probably been noticed a bit more. The thing is, I should emphasise to you that time, that music wasn't held in very great regard. It was very much an underground thing. Certainly in the 50s, it wasn't, you know, people didn't think a great deal of it. And it was only until the 60s started that, you know, things started moving. Well, things started moving in everywhere in the 60s. If anyone can remember that far back. And anyway, we kept going to these Cheoils, and eventually I won the All Ireland in Gorey, way down in Wexford, in the senior competition in 1962. I won the flute and I won the whistle, and Micky won the under 18. So that was it. In the early days, of course, I played in the Ceili bands of the time. There was a band in Derry Lane called the Harp of Erin, and I played in that band, and it was just playing at Ceili's. And my brothers and I, we used to sing at the concerts, and that was organised by the priests of the parish. And I suppose I should sing one of my father's songs, and it's a song called The Little Thatch Cabin. I'll only sing a verse, a chorus of it, because you're probably more into the music and the singing. This is a song called The Little Thatch Cabin, the best home of all. So I'll sing you one or two verses of it. It's a lovely old tune. It goes like this. Right well I remember that little thatch cabin where I first saw the light of my life's early morn. It stands on a hillside in view of a village, and in that same cabin my father was born. 'Twas there that I started on life's cruel journey, learned the beauty of right and the error of wrong. 'Twas there that I first drove the cows to the meadow, a barefooted boy as I heard the bird song. Go where I may, as through life I may wander, I never can find it in palace or hall, a home half so dear to my heart as that old house, that little thatch cabin, the best home of all. And it goes on from there. I might sing the rest of it at a later point, if you want to hear it. That's a rare song that you wouldn't hear, and I should emphasise that our house was a Caelian house. Now people get wrong that a Caelian house was a visiting house where people just went to visit, and sometimes you really didn't want to see them. It might be an old neighbour, a man called Tommy Lunny, who lived on his own, and he'd come into the house, well, whether you wanted him or not, and they would stay half the night, and there was other people who'd come into the house, and the entertainment in those days was the radio, you listen to the radio obviously at times, but it was conversation, it was, and people played cards, There's a famous game at home called Whist, which people played. And then there's a game which I don't think has ever come here called 25. And that was the hobby at that time. And of course when the television started to become more widespread, that stopped. And the other thing we used to have to do as Catholics, which is interesting, we used to have to say the rosary at night, kneel down and say the rosary. But when the television came in, that stopped as well. So, where do we see? I started then going around to these flagpoles and various things in the 60s and playing around Moor. Now, the first time I ever heard the flute, I should emphasise, was a man called Joe McGuire. And this would be a long, long time ago, sometime in the 50s. He must have been sent for. He lived about 7 or 8 miles, I suppose, from me, at a place called Drumroosk in Ceili. And John Joe came down, and he was a young man. Of course, at that time, I'm happy to say John Joe was still around and a great player. And this was the first time I heard the flute, and it was one of these old simple system flutes. I'd never seen the silver flute, do you understand? Not until much later. And John Joe came down, and I was just blown away by the sound of the flute. I thought it was wonderful. I think one of the tunes I can remember he played that time was this one. John Joe played a different style to me, a more tonguing style. But I'll just play one of the tunes he played, and here goes. It was a time, I should emphasise, that I was come from a remote area, and it wasn't until I started to travel that people started to hear you when you come from the country. And maybe I'll try and play another one or two of John Joe's tunes. He played the Dunmore Lasses. And maybe the other two after. I'll try and remember these. And these tunes were recorded by a man called Tom Morrison on an old 78. And I only heard that recording until later. Tom Morrison came from Galway, I think, as far as I remember. And he was a great player, and there was a Boru player accompanying him, and it was just a wonderful player. Anyway, some people said they would like to hear the Little Thatch Cabin. Would you like to hear that? Okay, I'll try and remember it all. A song, this is a song, The Little Thatch Cabin, the best home of all, was sung in Fermanagh and seemed to be sung in the Derry Lane area and my area, Fermanagh, South Fermanagh, and didn't seem to be known really very much anywhere else. And I'll sing it. It goes like this. Right well I remember that little thatch cabin where I first saw the light of my life's early morn. It stands on a hillside in view of a village, and in that same cabin my father was born. 'Twas there that I started on life's cruel journey, learned the beauty of right and the error of wrong. 'Twas there that I first drove the cows to the meadow, a barefooted boy as I heard the bird song. Go where I may as true life I may wander, I never can find it in palace or hall, a home half so dear to my heart as that old house, that little thatch cabin, the best home of all. I ploughed for my father, I mowed in the meadow, cut turf in the bog on a long summer's day, when the lark in the heavens its sweet notes would charm you, intel to drive dull care and worry away. It's oft times I think back on days of my childhood, I think back on childhood with a heart-rending pain. I wish all I had in all my life's possessions, that I could live over my childhood again. In scorn rest my father, and God rest my mother. They now take their last sleep by the old churchyard wall. In my dreams I can still see them smiling and happy, in that little thatch cabin, the best home of all. And it's go where I may as true life I may wander, I never can find it in palace or hall, a home half so dear to my heart as that old house, as that little thatch cabin, the best home of all. Little Thatch Cabin. There was a verse I kind of forgot there. Soft times I think back in days of my childhood, things back in youth with a heartbreaking pain. I'll try and sing that one again. It's a lifetime since I sang that song, and I've never sang it on stage. Do you understand? I've never, any stage, even off stage, you know, and it's hard. I suppose I'm getting old. But nobody knows these songs. And did you ever hear that song before? There you are. You're hearing it now. And it's oft times I think back on days of my childhood. I think back on youth with a heartbreaking pain. I'd give all I had in all my life's possessions if I could live over my childhood again. So that's the whole song for you. Anyway, I'll take you on a bit further. We'll have to travel on a bit further. Sometime in the mid-60s, I should tell you, I didn't always work as a musician. You'd probably be interested to know. I worked from 1960 to 1964. I worked in a shop, a grocer's shop. And we got a lot of hardship in the old days. I cycled 7 miles to work and 7 miles back, which was 14 miles all round. I started at 9:30 in the morning, and I worked till late in the evening. And I got a half day on Thursday, and I worked till 9 o'clock at night. And I worked there for 4 years, and till one day I felt, well, this is not a good idea, you know. And the main old devil that employed me, I don't mind mentioning his name, don't care if he has relations here. There's a man called P. Blake. And do you know how much I got paid? £1 a week, which would be $1, whatever, $1.60, $1.70. And I got £52 at the end of the year. And I can recall there was a very severe winter in 1963, which I got so cold and frozen that I had to get off the bike and walk. And that was the year that Padraig O'Keefe died of the cold. He was out for a drink and he fell before he could reach the house, and he died of the cold. Well, I can tell you a few hundred miles away was a young man nearly died of the cold as well. So that's true. Anyway, I found myself in Donegal. I got asked by a woman called Bridie Gallagher, who was a singer, a popular singer of the time, singing, you know, more commercial type of songs. She asked me to go on a tour with her of Donegal, and Bridie's career wasn't going as well that time, and there was various singers. There was a pop singer. There was various different people on the show, and we were staying in Stranraer in Donegal. And Stranraer is a sister town of Ballybofey, and we're staying in a guest house. And during the day, being a musician, I inquired was there any musicians in the area, and I was told there was a man called Doherty, Michael Doherty. Knew nothing about him, and this is the person I'm referring to now is one of the famous Dohertys of Donegal. It was Micky Doherty and it was Johnny Doherty. So I went to see Micky, the first time I seen him, and I was just amazed. I went up to the door and I knocked on the door like that. And he says, "Who is it?" And I says, "It's Cathal McConnell." He says, "Come in." And I says, "I'm Cathal McConnell and I play the flute." He says, "Come in." And he played for me. And he was a pretty old man at that time, but he was wonderful. So I should play you one of his tunes. And he played a slip jig for me, and I just call it Micky Doherty. I think it's called, I've no name for it, I don't think, but I'll just play it for you. There's a tune I got from Micky Doherty. Now, Micky Doherty had a different style of playing. This has amazed me, and I just loved the way he played. I thought he was a lovely person and just really, really interesting. Micky Doherty was an extraordinary musician, very, very great storyteller, and great character, really. Their style of playing would be different. Maybe you should try this on the whistle. He played a version of the Flowers of Edinburgh. Now, Micky didn't play it that way. He sort of swang it more. He sort of played it. He sort of played it like this now. So you can see the difference. He gave me an old version of Bonnie Kate. Probably know the tune Bonnie Kate was made very popular by Michael Coleman. Of course, Michael Coleman, a marvellous Sligo musician, great player, and recorded, well, quite a bit, and died a comparatively young man. But Micky played an older version of that tune, and it's a kind of interesting because it kind of swings more than it's probably an older version than one that Coleman played, and there's more of a swing to it. I'll try another flute here. This is one that was brought back from China, Hong Kong. Now, you know the standard version of Bonnie Kate is something like this. Something like that. Micky again is sort of he's a wonderful sort of rhythmic player, but he sort of played it like this, and again these are tunes that you wouldn't these particular versions you don't hear them very much. You can hear the difference that Micky was playing more on the beat, you know, rather than you know, with all the stops and so. It's just different. It's just a different way of doing things, and that's sort of that. Micky Doherty definitely inspired me. He played another wonderful piece which the band played for years called "The Hound and the Hare," but I won't. I won't even attempt to try that one because that's descriptive of the hound chasing after the hare, which a lot of complicated variations and things like that. He before I think I leave Micky Doherty, he played a different version of Roller on the Rye Grass, and I came up with an idea of Roller on the Rye Grass. Normally, this is the standard version of it now. Now, you can go to sessions now, and most people will play this tune practically note for note. It'll be the same. So, this is the standard version. So, Micky played it different, and I come up with an idea of playing Micky's version, and then I had another version that Johnny Doherty played it, because later on in Donegal, Len Graham, the singer, and I used to go up to Donegal to meet the Doherty, to meet Johnny Doherty and Micky Doherty. And they were hard to find because you didn't know where Johnny, he just used to move. He was a traveller. He used to move from house to house, and he was very sensitive. If you said something that he didn't like, he would disappear, and he could disappear to any number of houses. Could be any, and people wouldn't be saying where he was. And I think Johnny and Micky respected each other. I think Johnny was a bit jealous of Micky, and Micky was a bit jealous of Johnny, and they really did have different versions of tunes, and this will demonstrate it. I'll play the version of Roller on the Rye Grass that Micky played, and then I come round to the first part again, and this is a variation that Johnny played, and then I'll play the standard version of it, and you'll notice it's a bit different, but maybe. Thank you very much. Well, we'll move on. The Dohertys were great. We got tunes of them with the band later on recorded. A tune called Last Night's Joy, an old granny in the corner. Great tune. Might play them at a later point. Don't seem to be played very much in the tradition, but I think really is we recorded them way back, and it was in vinyl, an earlier technology, if you like. People have iPods and mini discs now, and the mini discs even out of vogue. Anyway, later on at that time, I started. There was a man used to come down into our house, a man called Tommy Gunn, and Tommy was from a place called Corratiston in Derry Lynn, and it's a famous place. There was a lot of music there in the past. Big John McManus is another man who comes from there, and it's a very well-known name in Fermanagh. There's a lot of Gunn family, and Gunn is Gunn. Gunn is a Scots name. It's from Caithness way up in Scotland, and it would seem to suggest that the Gunn clan came to work for Lord Erin in County Fermanagh about over 200 years ago, and there were carpenters and there were tailors and there were musicians, and they left a lot of their music and intermarried with the people. So it's almost incestuous in a way, like there's so many Guns up there. It's Mary Gunn married Jack Gunn, John Gunn married Gilly Gunn, and it goes on and on and on. It really is something else. It really is something else. And they have great music over there and all that. And anyway, Tommy asked me up to Belfast, and it was during that time I met another man. He's in town at the present time, Robin Morton, and he was running a folk club at that time called the Ulster Folk Music Society. And then I started playing up in Belfast, and this would be around slightly pre the Troubles, 67, 66, 67, around that time. And I used to play up in Belfast, and of course there was great music at that time. And it was at one of these particular concerts that the late Ewan McCall and his wife Peggy Seeger was playing, and we were playing in the Whitlow Hall, and we were part of the act, and they asked us to do a tour of England and Scotland, and that was 1967. It was the first time I played in England and Scotland, and that was quite an experience. Anyway, I'll sing one of Tommy Gunn's songs here to lighten things up. Tommy was a great character. He played the fiddle, he sang, he done accompaniment with the bones, and he danced. And he sang some songs that would get you in trouble now because, it's not politically correct, one of these songs. And you have to be careful singing these songs. And this is a song about a man that sold his wife. But it's not as bad as you think, because the man that generally got the wife there might have been something going on between him and the wife in the first place. So it's a stupid song, and maybe you should hear it. It goes like this. I'll sing and praise of John McGee, who was auctioning his wife. She was a hard-working woman, but the devil all her life. Neither peace nor contentment this poor man could find, so a way to get rid of her come into his mind. Diddly-idle-dum, diddly-idle, diddle-diddle-do. It was on one fair day morning that she gave him some old jaw. So he says, I can auction you according to the law. So he printed on her forehead that by auction she would go, and the more were the buyers, the better she'd be sold. Skiddery-idle-dum, diddly-idle-diddle-dum. Now a farmer from Killarney for the auction he did wait, with his mouth hanging open like a 9-foot gate. Says he, what a pretty woman I've never saw before, and the more that the bid for her he bid a shilling more. Skiddery-idle-dum, diddly-idle-diddle-diddle-do. You're supposed to join in. Diddly-idle-dum, diddly-idle-diddle-diddle-do. Now a farmer from Kilkenny, who had just been passing by. He bought this old geezer for shillings 25. Now he been a widower and a neighbour of her own. She hopped on the cart and they both drove home. Skiddery idle dum, idle diddle diddle oh. Now to conclude and finish and to end upon me strife, this poor John McGee, he's gone home without his wife. May the devil follow after her, the auctioneer did say. And the men, says the women, and they all join to pray. Skiddery idle 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 diddle idle dum, they dum idle 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 dum, idle 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 dum, idle 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 dum, idle 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 dum, they idle 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 dum, idle 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 dum, idle 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 dum, die do. Now, it'd be incomplete for this point for me not to mention my great friend, John McManus. John has been still my mentor and friend. John, well, he's older than I am. He's by quite a bit. And he's still a great man. He comes from a great musical family. Again, on his mother's side, his mother was a great lilter. His uncle Q was a great fiddle player, and of a whole range of music from that area. And music goes back. His uncle Frank also, which I got the song Long Expecting Comes at Last. It come from Frank Gunn. And John over the years has given me many tunes and still is. And sometimes when I'm in Edinburgh, there was one time I was in Edinburgh and doing the shopping, and the next thing my mobile phone went on. I said, "Who is it?" "Oh, it's John, I just thought of a tune." And he'd literally a tune. He's a wonderful character. So I'll play one of his tunes. Now this is a rare one. It's an air, and it's called The Wedding of Mary. Now this is not to be confused with another air which is called The Wedding of Molly. And I recorded The Wedding of Molly in an old vinyl thing. I bet you Bill Ochs hasn't even got it. He probably has. I'll play you the Wedding of Molly first. And this is a song, the words have been lost of the song, and it's a nice tune. Because some of these old tunes, the slow tunes, should be played. And I'll just play it once over. The Wedding of Molly. Now this is the Wedding of Mary, not to be confused with the Wedding of Molly, and it's a kind of a different tune. My friend Joe McGuire, when we were compiling the book, The Hidden Fermanagh, he went mad about this tune. He thought it was a great wee tune, and it goes like this. Anyone who's got the Hidden Fermanagh book, you've heard about the Hidden Fermanagh book? It's a book. Well, I'll tell you about it after this tune. I played one of John's reels. He got it from his Uncle Hugh. John's not too good on the names of reels. And it goes like this. And if I think of something after it, I'll tell you. We simply call this Uncle Hugh's. That's a second tune called the Noon Lasses, or the Loon Lasses, and that's probably a Scottish tune, because a loon, a lowland loon, is a person from the lowlands. That's a Scots word. Now, at this point, does anyone want to ask me questions before I move on?
When was, or how do I phrase this? Can you describe the first time you played here in the States? Came stateside and played, and who were you playing with?
Well, it was very interesting indeed. We were the first band, the Boys of Luck, to become professional on a full-time basis. And as far as I remember, we went over, we were a young band at the time, we were young and strong, and we played at the Cambridge Festival, I think, in 1971 or 72. And we went to the States. Whether we played at the Cambridge Festival after we went to America, I think probably we did. We went to America, I think, sometime in 72, and that was a great experience. It blew me away. One of the first places we played in was a place called Fox Hollow in New York State, I think it is. And we played in coffee houses. We played in a place called Passiums in Cambridge, Mass. And we used to do, now the work is hard, we used to do 2 or 3 shows a night. And of course, we were young men at that time. We drank more than coffee, we drank whiskey and beer and everything was going. And we lived hard, travelled hard, we had a great time. It was 72, I believe. And then we travelled, we had the States all to our own for about 3 years before the next band came along. I think the next band might have been either Planksty or Dead Annan. I can't really, it's a hell of a long time ago.
Yes, please. I was just wondering if you could describe the idea of having someone come to your house as a sort of an expert teacher, as opposed to the way we would have to go to a class in a schoolroom or something. Was it
dramatically different, do you think?
Well, you have more advantages here now because, you know, somebody like Bill can write the music, explain it. I had nobody to explain the roles or anything to me. It's just I noticed, I'll just demonstrate it to you. I noticed Flanagan was doing something with the roll, the triplet, you know. I was doing something like this, you know. I was going the first house in Connacht, which goes, and I knew he was doing something different, and I just happened to look and see this finger, you know, where the finger hops. And I just happened to notice he was doing that. But I had to see it. And so people nowadays have great advantages. It would nearly go too far to say that it's nearly too much nowadays because, you know, if you hear a tune you like, you say, well, I'll put that on tape, you know, you'll record it next week. I couldn't do that because I can give you an example of that I used to go to the Ceoil sessions, and there was this man, he's not keeping well at all, a man called Francis Quinn, and he was playing the fiddle, and he played these two tunes, and I just loved these tunes. I thought they were just really great. And I said, Francis, give me those tunes. No tape recorder available at that time. There was tape recorders, but not easily available, and not everyone had them. And I certainly didn't have them. And I had the poor man playing the tune, the two tunes, the whole night, and had my ear down to the F hole of the fiddle. And this is a true story. And those tunes I remember to this day. And if you don't believe me, I can play the tunes. The two tunes are called Bunker Hill, which would have been written over in this country. And the second tune is called the Spike Island Lasses. And the first tune had 3 parts, and the second tune had 4 parts. And I'll just give you an example of that. I'll play them on the whistle because they're rather demanding. Bunker Hill first. Twice over. So that was a lot of memorising, and that I was only just giving you an example, and people had the same ability to memorise songs. There's a story told about a man, I knew a famous singer called Eddie Butcher, and there's a story told about his father went one time to get the words of a song. He could neither read nor write, and he went to this particular man who could read and write, a teacher or something like that, and the man was a singer, and he sung the song. Now I've seen the text of the song, it's quite a long song, 7 or 8 verses, and he sang the song once to the man, and he says, "Do I need to sing it again?" He says, "No, I have it." That's pretty good. Now, I couldn't do that with songs, because I find if I'm learning songs, I write out the words, and then I don't use an iPod or anything like that. I use my humble tape recorder, and I record it, and then I just sing and sing and sing over it. Repetition. Just that's the way I do it. Any more questions? Yes.
These various people that you described having different styles.
Yeah.
Do you think their styles were more a product of the region and they came from different regions, or were they more individual, product of their own personality and the way they heard things?
That's a difficult one to answer. I think, by and large, it's. I think styles is to do with speech, and I would speak in a pretty direct way. Tunes like that I would go for would be diddle 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 dum diddle 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 dum. It's pretty much down the way. It suits me. Whereas if you go to the west of Ireland, it'd be a bit more easygoing, meandering. There'd be more rolls, and in it, and that would reflect more easygoing speech from that area. But there are exceptions to the rule. But I think, generally speaking, it would reflect the language and speech of the area and where they come from. And I mean, if you go down to, say, East Galway, where Jack Cohen and who's that other flute player, Bill? Mike Rafferty. They have a lovely style, of easy style. I remember going to see Jack Cohen. I was a young fella and a big beard on me at the time, and I suppose Jack Cohen didn't know what to make of me. We both, and I couldn't believe how slow he played. I did record him now, and I did love the way he played. He played a version of a tune. Well, I see now, can I remember? We call it The Lark in the Strand, and I played it this way. And of course, I started playing with Jack, and I was away ahead of him. I was away in the next part before Jack even got started. And Jack's a lovely man. If anyone's talking to him, give him my regards. But the way I knew this tune was like this. But Jack didn't play it that way at all. Jack, it's something to do with the phrasing over there. There's a saying over there, the long bow and the long blow. The long bow and the fiddle and the long. And examples of that would be the late Paddy Carty, and there's some players also carrying on that tradition. And I love it personally, but it wouldn't exactly be me in the long run. I mean, I would try to copy some of those tunes, but in the long run, I would return to my normal self, or my abnormal self. Jack sort of played it this way. fiddler and anyway, if anyone else, I'll continue on my musical rambles because I need to get on here. Anyway, I eventually played around. Other musicians I heard influenced me was McCoy from Derrygonley, who I should play one of Mick's tunes, which was a tune called "The Boys of 25" and "Chase Her Through the Garden." And these tunes would be better on a whistle, I think. So I'll play on one of these whistles. And "The Boys of 25" is a tune I heard Mick playing, and I have to emphasise that Derrygonley is not very far from Derrylin, but there was tunes trapped down there that the people, that my friend Big John Mack never heard of, never heard these tunes, which is amazing, and tunes in Derrylin that Mick Hoy wouldn't have heard of. Amazing. So I just play these tunes over twice. Eddie Duffy's a man that I know for a long time, and he asked me in 1972 to go down and record some of his tunes. He says, I've rare tunes. Now this is the Derrygonley area, and he used to play with my friend Mick Hoy. And we had terrible trouble getting down because there was a bad fog. One of the drivers let us down, and another driver turned up, and we drove down to Eddie's house. And it's a remote area, big lanes and all that type of stuff. And Eddie played me all this amazing music. But I'll play you one of his more unusual tunes, and that's something to do, you were talking about style earlier, about generally in the north, it's more simple and straight down the line, or more rhythmic, would say. More rhythmic. Well, Eddie was a kind of an exception to the rule. He'd a very, very light style of playing, but he also was very ornamented, which is an exception to the rule. And this is one of the tunes he played, which was an exception to the rule. And nobody seems to play it. It's rather hard to play. It's called "The Girl in Danger." And I thought it'd be a great tune to play on the pipes. You can see that tune is just full of rolls. It's very. I try to copy what Eddie is doing, but it's crazy. And I suppose it's slightly descriptive of a girl in danger running down and crossing over hedges and ditches and wherever. And it's crazy because it ends on a roll that starts like. I think that's a tune that comes from the pipes. Well, I'm going to move on now. This last good number of years, I've lived in Scotland and in Edinburgh, as a matter of fact. I moved to Edinburgh, I think it was 1978. So when you think of it, I've been nearly there 30 years. And the first few years I was in Edinburgh, I hated it. I was drinking all the time and falling downstairs, falling upstairs. I got it very hard to get used to the place. The Edinburgh people are very reserved, and you have to get used to them. They're okay in their own way. There's nothing wrong with them. They all have got their own attributes like anybody else. But they have their music, and of course I picked up a number of Scottish tunes. And picked up a number of marches and various things, and these are some of the tunes I like to play. And I kind of, over the years, I've been kind of isolated from my own musicians, Irish musicians at home, and I've started to do some compositions, and I sometimes like putting bits into tunes that are not there and taking bits out of them that are there, if you can understand. I change them, I alter them, and so I'll play you one of the tunes that I like anyway. I'm going to play it on this wee flute. Maybe I'll play it on. No, maybe I'll play it on this one. This is a tune called Lock and Side, and it's one of the tunes, Scottish tunes. And it's a piping tune from the Highland Pipes. Thank you. In other areas of Scotland, you go to the east coast of Scotland, Aberdeenshire, and they have a tradition where they have a lot of tunes which are in the flat keys, what they call B flat and E flat, and not suitable for the flute at all. And it's influenced by the classical musicians who visited that area a way back. Centuries ago, and I've picked up in one or two of the tunes or one or two of the airs and adapted them to the flute. And there's one called Geo Forbes, of course, and this tune was composed by a man called Peter Millen, who was a man who taught Scott Skinner. You might have heard of Scott Skinner, have you? And Peter Millen was way back in the 1800s. He was born in 1830 or something and died in 1908. And he was a great musician by all accounts, and he a great composer as well. And tunes that people play that they don't know is a Peter Millen tune. Does you know that tune, Big John McNeil's they call it? The diddle 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 dong. You know that tune? Oh, well, that's a Peter Millen tune. But this is a tune in the key of E. It's quite difficult to play on the flute, but I'll play it for you. Different than any Irish air, more, I would say, intended to be accompanied by, by cello or keyboard. It's a bloody hard tune to play. It's a hard tune. I wouldn't be playing that tune with a drink in me, I'll tell you. Well, I'd probably play it in D. Now, I'm interested in keys. I'm going to devote to and doing different things. And I've Bill to thank for showing me this particular technique. I don't know whether you've seen me playing it before, but it was definitely Bill showed me, and I've used it to great effect all over the world, indeed. I'm kind of fed up with it, you know. and this is a technique was shown to Bill. Now, I hope I've got my facts right here, Bill. I believe Bill was showing this technique of playing two whistles at the one time by Liam O'Flynn, and Liam Og was showing this technique by a piper and singer-songwriter Pat Sky. Is that correct, Bill? Yep. And Bill showed it to me, and I said, yes, here we go. And since that, I've tried doing doing various other types of combinations of whistles, but not to great effect. I don't think I'll do it tonight. But I'll play you the two tunes that I always generally play. And have you seen me playing this before, have you? No. I'm going to play two tunes. The first tune is the Blarney Pilgrim, which I learned from Tommy Peoples. Tommy has been a great influence in my life. Tommy's from Donegal, of course. And the second tune is the Pinch of Snuff, which I got from Tommy Peoples as well. And I wish somebody would learn this, because oh, that's the wrong whistle. Oh, where are we? Oh yeah. So big. Oh, here goes. So you want to try and go home and do that? The easiest way to do it is to try a simple tune. Like in the G position, assuming these two E flats are Gs, doesn't matter, two are the same. Just do something like the South Wind, you know, something slow like. And so on. Something, or something like Raglan Road or something like that. Anyway, just try a simple tune. The other thing people has asked me, have I composed? Well, I'm more a kind of an innovator rather than a composer. I'll give you a few examples. I do a tune called the Rambling Pitchfork. You know the tune, the Rambling Pitchfork? And what I like to do is play the tune straight first, and then put sort of variations and things into it, and well, and people think it's crazy, but people enjoy it because the way I look at it, people know it the straight way anyway. So this is the Rambling Pitchfork. Straight first, straight through the normal way, and then a few different changes. I live in a house with a man who is a great piper, Alan MacDonald. I hope you have a chance. He's an extraordinary musician, but he's also an extraordinary composer. And he plays the pipes, and he sometimes plays these electronic pipes. And when you consider there's only 9 notes on the range, and what tunes they compose within that is extraordinary. But I was forced into a position recently where I have a daughter, Shona, who's 18 years old, and 18 going on 100, and she says, "Dad," and I said, "What is it, Shona?" "Dad, you have to compose a tune for me." And I said, "Oh no, you know," and I knew I had to do something that would be reasonably nice, you know, and because I do think a lot of my daughter. I come up with this tune, and I come up with a sort of a kind of a lyrical, sort of jig. And he actually worked a harmony out for it with great difficulty, because I like, that's another thing in traditional music, I like using harmony, you know, to the tunes, and I like messing around with tunes, and to tell you the truth, some of my best work has come out of boredom, being really bored on my tree. But this is the Shona tune anyway, and then I might play another one after that, and I'll explain you something about that. But this is the Shona's tune for Shona, my daughter Shona. Now, I decided to compose another one for another friend of mine called Therese, who's been very good to Shona. And this is a tune of a different order. It's a kind of a more complex tune. I don't know whether you've got my album, but there's a tune I play on it called Farewell to Waverley Park. And it's a kind of it goes through all the keys, and it's a kind of a contrary sort of a tune. Again, it would be good better with accompaniment than without accompaniment. And I composed it, but I got a bit afraid that Shona would be jealous of this tune over her other one. So I decided to dedicate it to the two of them, and I called it My Favourite Two. Maybe I was a bit devious there. And it's the key of C, sort of the key of C, but I suppose you get a good fiddle player, strings player, you could play it in any key. You're good enough, I suppose. And it goes like this. I played this for Bill and Ed, and I seem to like this tune. So it goes like this. Now, do you like that tune, do you? Yeah. Well, it's different. Anyway, I'm quite happy with it. Another thing I like doing, Another thing I like doing too is playing airs. I like the slow airs. Do you like the slow airs? I like playing airs on different keys. I'll give you a quick example of that. There's an air from Donegal called Majin Mara, the Mermaid, and I'll play it in a normal key that people would play it, you know, and then I'll play it on the key which I changed it into. It's harder to play it in a key that I changed it into. Most of these keys are not working, so I have to do cross fingering and all sorts of trickery. So this is I'll just play it once over the regular key. Lovely tune. Oh. I'm not saying this is better, but it's different. It's interesting taking a tune and putting it in a different key, because even though you're basically playing the same notes, you get a different effect. Either a darker more melancholic effect or whatever, you definitely do get a different effect. I suppose that's why people play things in different keys rather than playing in the one key all the time. That'd be crazy, wouldn't it? Just playing in the one key all the time. So this is an example of that. Another thing that I try to do is this is another example of changing tunes, and maybe you'd like to hear another song at some point, would you? Oh, yeah. Would you like to hear another song? Well, I'll give you an example. I'll give you a song after this. There's a tune called Tarbolton and the Longford Collector. Now, in case you don't know the tunes, I'll just play them once through very quickly. These were recorded by Michael Coleman way back 1933, 35 or something like that. I'm not sure of the facts on this. And they were great tunes. And there's a story told about Coleman. Towards the end of his life, was in the 40s, there was this man who was a good fiddle player, went to see Coleman, and the only way to get him to play was to bring him a good fiddle and bring him a bottle of whiskey. And Coleman, still playing marvellously, was delighted to see the great fiddle and was delighted to see the bottle of whiskey, of course, because he liked to drink. And the man who was also a fiddle player, and he'd got this great fiddle, an Amati or a Strad or something like that, Canarius, but he wanted to impress Coleman. And Coleman was playing this great fiddle. He never played a fiddle like that in his life, and the guy kept taking the fiddle off Michael. Michael would only be playing a tune, a few of his favourite tunes, like diddle 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 diddle. Give us the fiddle, Mike, till I play for you. And this went on for about an hour and a half. And Coleman was losing his temper, and this man played a big long selection for him, and he says, Michael, what do you think of me as a fiddle player? And Michael said to him, he says, if you left out what you put into it and put in what you left out of it, you'd make a good fiddle player. So he probably didn't like him in the first place. So this might be a case of that. It'd be great if Coleman could hear this and see what he'd think. He'd probably hit me over the head with a stick. I don't think he would. This is the tunes now. I just played them, the two tunes that I'm going to play over briefly. Once over. This is the normal. Yes, the right way. Now I'm going to play you the jazzed up way. Well, when I'm on stage sometimes, the lads in the band like me to play the whistle, and you can't be playing too straight. You have to play something kind of zany or off the wall. And this might be something I would play, and it's off the wall. The first place is faster, the second place there's notes on it. Here goes. Thank you very much. Well, it's been a real pleasure. I hope you've enjoyed this particular performance. I'm going to sing. The one thing I'm concerned about is the songs. I think that some of these big, songs which you're not hearing nowadays. I sung one earlier on, the Little Thatch Cabin, and I'm beginning to become one of the old boys now. Used to be, and these songs I've learned over the years, sometimes from recording, sometimes from the books. And this song I learned from the recording of Micky Doherty. It's called The Holland Handkerchief. Have you heard it? And it's a song. A Holland Handkerchief is a mixture of cotton and linen, and this is one of the big ballads. It's one of the songs that's called the classic ballads, if you like, and it's a story. And I got it from Micky Doherty, who happily is still with us. He's a man about 90 years old now and lives in Donegal. And it's a kind of an amazing sort of story. The Holland Handkerchief goes like this. A wealthy squire lived in our town. He was a man of high renown. He had a daughter, a beauty bright, and the name he called her was his heart's delight. Many's the young man to court her came, but none of them could her favour gain, until there came one of a low degree, and above them all she had fancied he. But when her father he came to know that his lovely daughter loved this young man so, over 50 miles he sent her away, all to deprive her of her wedding day. One night as she lay in her bedroom, her love appearing from out dead loom, he touched her hand and to her did say, "Arise, my darling, and come away." With this young man she got on behind, and they rode swifter than any wind. They rode on for an hour or more, till he cries, "My darling, my head feels sore." A Holland handkerchief she then took out, and with it wrapped his aching head about. She kissed his limbs and to him did say, "My love, you're colder than any clay." When they arrived at her father's gate, he says, "Get down, love, the hour is late. Get down, love, and go to bed, and I'll see this noble horse is groomed and fed." When she arrived at her father's hall, "Who's there, her own father called. "'Tis I, dear father, didn't you send for me? By such a messenger naming he." "Oh no, dear daughter, that ne'er can be. Your words are false and you lie to me. For on yon far mountain your young man died, and in yon green meadow his body lies. Nay, truth then done this young maiden brave, and with her friends she exposed the grave, where lay her young man, although 9 months dead, with a Holland handkerchief around his head." I'm going to play a tune now. It's one of Flanagan's tunes, a tune, common tune in the tradition. Do you know the Harvest Home? Do you? Do you? And then I'll play a tune that's... we lost a great musician in Ireland, Sean McGuire, a wonderful fiddle player. I'm sure you must have heard some recordings of Sean McGuire. One of the best ever, really. So, I'll play you the Harvest Home and then the Mason's April. So, what I always do in these tunes is I play them straight first, the straight way, and then I come round and then put the variations on what, you know. There's no absolute fixed pattern. Well, I suppose there is, you know, there's certain things you do, but sometimes you like to take a chance and try something else. So I might try and do that this time. Thank you. I think I'll get you to join in a song now. There's have you heard of a song called High Done? Have you? You will. This is a song I learned from a friend called Brian Mullen. And it's about a man called Mr. Dunne, and that's a name, like, you know, surname. And he runs into all sorts of problems in life. And it has a good chorus. So I could teach you the chorus. And it goes like this. I'll sing the first verse and then I'll give you the chorus, and you can join in at least one line of it. I once was well acquainted with a man called Mr. Dunne. A very jovial man was he, and full of harmless fun. He courted well and married was at the age of 21, and soon a long big family had Mr. and Mrs. Dunne. For there was high Dunne, low Dunne, over Dunne and under Dunne, all the little younger Dunnes in and out the run. There was old Dunne and young Dunne's youngest son. Young Dunne will be a Dunne when the old Dunne's done. Would you like to try that? These are what we call in the tradition comic songs, because it's all right having the Holland Handkerchiefs, but you'd commit suicide if you heard too many of those. So, you try that. For there was high Dunne, low Dunne, over Dunne and under Dunne, all the little younger Dunnes in and out the run. There was old Dunne and young Dunne's youngest son. Young Dunne will be a Dunne when the old Dunne's done. Now I'm going to put 3 songs of these together. And they're all equally stupid. There's High Dunne, and then there's Mr. Cummings, and then there's any amount of eating and drinking. And that's called a cant ballad, which is half sung and half spoken. And that goes back to medieval times. And I got that from a friend of mine in Australia. So, are you ready? There's the chorus on the first 2, and the third one you have to leave to me. I'm going. These are rather hard to do. I once was well acquainted with a man called Mr. Dunne. A very jovial man was he, and full of harmless fun. He courted well and married was at the age of 21, and soon a long big family had Mr. and Mrs. Dunne. For there was high Dunne, low Dunne, over Dunne and under Dunne, all the little younger Dunnes in and out the run. There was old Dunne and young Dunne's youngest son. Young Dunne will be a Dunne when the old Dunne's done. In the course of time now Mr. Dunne, he got himself a wife, and soon he found out that he had the hardest fight for life, for to keep 3 little bellies full and a wife that weighed 12 stone. Well, any man that could do that, you ought to say well done. For there was high Dunne, low Dunne, over Dunne and under Dunne, all the little younger Dunnes in and out the run. There was old Dunne and young Dunne's youngest son. Young Dunne will be a Dunne when the old Dunne's done. Now when Mrs. Dunne presented Dunne with their first bouncing son, they named him Herbert Duncan Dunne, but called him Cherry Bun. And when as thick as hops the run, and many more to come, says Mrs. Dunne to Mr. Dunne, more bread or we'll be done. For there was high Dunne, low Dunne, over Dunne and under Dunne, all the little younger Dunnes in and out the run. There was old Dunne and young Dunne's youngest son. Young Dunne will be a Dunne when the old Dunne's done. This is a complicated verse now. Well, here's good luck to the youngest Dunne, likewise to the oldest Dunne. Let's hope the youngest Dunne will do as the oldest Dunne has done. For any Dunne to be a Dunne, and not a vacant one. What's done by Dunne must be well done, so well done, good old Dunne. For there was high Dunne, low Dunne, over Dunne and under Dunne. All the little younger Dunnes in and out the run. There was old Dunne and young Dunne's youngest son. Young Dunne will be a Dunne when the old Dunne's done. Well, I had a friend called Cummings, and I asked him round for tea. I said, come round on Sunday. He says, what do you mean? He didn't come till Monday, when I gone upstairs to bed. I got up and let him in, and shaking hands I said, oh, come in, Mr. Cummins, I expected you were coming, so please come in, Mr. Cummins, come and do. I knew that you were coming, 'cause you told me you were coming, and you never failed me hitherto. Remember, Mr. Cummins, every time you kept a coming, that a very hearty welcome waits for you. So, come in, Mr. Cummins, and let Mrs. Cummins come in, and let all the little Cummins come in too. I went to church last Sunday, and I very much regret the church was nearly empty, and the vicar seemed upset. When halfway through the sermon, Mr. Cummins wandered in. The vicar paused, and turning round, continued with a grin. Oh, come in, Mr. Cummins, I expected you were coming, so please come in, Mr. Cummins, come and do. I knew that you were coming, 'cause you told me you were coming, and you never failed me hitherto. Remember, Mr. Cummins, every time you kept a coming, that a very hearty welcome waits for you. So, come in, Mr. Cummins, and let Mrs. Cummins come in, and let all the little Cummins come in too. There's any amount of eating and drinking, lemonade, porter, and beer packed in creels, and if I'm not mistaken, there's 3 ton of bacon, and a whole wagon load of spare ribs and cow heels. She's a big girl so fair, with a face so rare, never was seen with a frown, and a proud boy was Barney to wed Nora Kearney, the prettiest girl in the town. To describe Nora's beauty, I couldn't find language. No wonder an artist nor a model should make. She's as nice as a bottle of beer and a sandwich. No wonder that Barney would die for her sake. The critics might clamour about sweet Minnie Palmer. She may be good looking, I'll no run her down, but she's not a bit neater, nor yet a bit sweeter than Nora, the prettiest girl in the town. For there was high Dunne, low Dunne, over Dunne and under Dunne, all the little younger Dunnes in and out the run. There was old Dunne and young Dunne's youngest son. Young Dunne will be a Dunne when the old Dunne's done. Mr. Dunne, ladies and gentlemen. I'll finish off with a tune called The Morning Dew. This is not a Coleman tune. It's a tune I kind of do my own thing on. It's one of these marvellous sort of droney, it's in the one key, and it just and I'd like to say thanks very much, and thank you again, Bill. Thank you very much.